Aaron Stroman here, 11-1 Leadership, taking you on the journey of what it takes us to do a startup, real-time leadership organization. My goal is to launch officially in January 2016, and I'm taking you through the book Volumployee, which I am writing right now. You're helping me edit this. I thank you for all the feedback that you've given me. I want to ask you for some more. Last week I talked about sharpening the axe, training the employee before you release them to do their job. Just like sharpening an axe before you go and cut down trees. What I found is I'm a failed lumberjack. It's true. Because my expectation was once I sharpen that axe once, it just stays sharp forever. But after I swung this against a few trees, against a few logs, it became dull. Then I became frustrated, and I didn't last. What was my problem? It's not the axe's fault, is it? It's mine, because I'm the one who needs to sharpen it. I had an entitled attitude when it came to this axe. Unfortunately, I had that same attitude with my employees. It's nothing to be proud of. I'm just being real and vulnerable with you guys. Last week I talked about sharpening the axe, training volunteers and leaders on the front end. This next chapter is called Sharpen the Axe Again. Here's where I fell short on this. With my volunteers, did an awesome training on the front end, but I know they have jobs, they have families, they have recreation. I didn't expect them to retain everything I taught them, and so I'd do continued training for my volunteers, and it worked beautifully. With my employees, I trained them once and I expected them to retain all the information, to catch the vision, to understand all the training I gave them and to never lose it. But that's not realistic, because then they begin doing their job, they hit the grind, and that vision began to leak. That training that they used once 4 months ago, they haven't used since then, well, they forget it. It begins to slip their mind. And I'll get frustrated and think, well, why aren't you retaining this information? I already trained you. Why are you coming to me with this question? Why are you asking me these things? I needed an attitude check. And as I began to explore my own leadership, I realized I had no problem doing ongoing training with volunteers. I need to apply that same attitude to my employees. Here's what I did. With volunteers, I always had two things that I continually did to sharpen the axe again. The first one is just ongoing training. Doing same training every year just to refresh everybody. Do specialized trainings mixed throughout the year so we stay sharp on things. I work in youth ministry, so in youth culture, it's important to have safety policies down. I always revisit that. Appropriate interaction with minors. What to do if someone's talking suicide or if someone talks about physical abuse, drug abuse. All these things are very important to be trained on. The second thing I did, continually cast vision. I always cast the vision for my volunteers because even though it's fresh in my mind, it's not fresh in everyone else's. And vision leaks. Bill Hybels talks about that, where if you just let vision sit, it begins to leak. That's why we got to continually cast it, pour up and fill up that vision. So the question is, how can we apply these concepts to our employees? With employees, it's just as unrealistic to expect them to retain everything from the first training as it is to expect an axe to stay sharp after chopping down several trees. I mean, just ask Paul Bunyan. He even had to sharpen his axe. We can't expect employees, or anybody really, to have 100% knowledge retention. So as I began experimenting with how I led volunteers and merging that with how I led my employees, here are some things that I found. First of all, I was their leader for a reason, right? The reason I was the leader is I have a little more experience. I've been doing it longer. I've kind of been there, done that, and I get to share that with those whom I lead, right? I'm not leading people who have more experience than me. No, those guys are at my boss. They're leading me. I need to make sure that I remember and recognize it. I've been doing it a little bit longer, a lot of bit longer in some cases. And not to hold that against anyone, but actually to share some of my experience and wisdom with them. For me, that was hard to realize because I don't necessarily see myself as a real experienced or wise person. But I found out that, wow, I do have something to offer my team. I need to share that generously with them. Second thing I noticed was job performance improved. Now this may be obvious, but as I began to do ongoing training and recast that vision, people worked better. The better they worked, the more satisfied they were with their employment. The more satisfied they were with themselves. And actually, the more satisfied they were with me. As their job performance improved, the overall attitude and environment of our working culture improved as well. Became less stressful, more enjoyable. It was a win-win-win-win situation. The third thing I noticed, especially when I began to recast the vision and make that a continual exercise in my life, was the entire team was able to keep the main thing the main thing. The more we cast the vision, the more we're able to say no to good things and yes to the great things. Help us keep on the right track, and again, stay focused, stay unified as a team, the more I cast that vision. Fourth thing is relationships improved. They just got better. I didn't have to approach them as their boss with corrective measures so much as I got to interact with them as their coach. And in my book, I much rather be a coach figure than a boss figure. I don't like the boss word. I don't like playing the boss card. I like being the coach, and ongoing training and recasting the vision helped me fit into that role better. Relationships improved. Friends got to stay friends, and I loved it. I still do love it. What really improved the relationships is when I was able to cut my employees a little bit of slack, take those teachable moments, and give them a little bit of grace in the times that maybe they fell short. And some of you may be asking, well, my employees don't deserve that kind of treatment. Maybe not, but that's why we call it grace. It's undeserved favor. Here are some ways that we can practically apply ongoing training to our organizations with our employees. Numero uno, change the expectation. All right, this is all on the leader. I had to change my expectation, realizing that people aren't perfect. They're going to forget things. Even though I may remember a certain something, doesn't mean everyone else will. I need to change my expectations and make room for a little more grace. If we can do that as leaders, if we cannot expect all of our employees to be superhumans and to actually be flawed people that are working for us, it will totally change our perspective and how we approach our leadership and how we lead these people. So the first one, change the expectation. Second one, just continual education. You don't necessarily have to be the person that's always doing the training. Maybe you hand off a book. Maybe you forward a podcast or a TED Talk that helps training in that specific area that you work in. But continue that education. That's going to sharpen your people. Third, ongoing training. Something that I began doing is I began to see myself as a consultant for my employees. I've always wanted to do consulting work. Hey, if I'm not there yet, if 11-1 leadership group hasn't started yet, how can I do this? Well, seeing myself as a consultant for my employees really changed my approach. You may actually surprise yourself at how much you know that's valuable to your employees and the rest of your team. So think through that, personal consultant for your employees. Another idea is maybe you have a friend that's in the same field as you. Maybe you bring him in to do a little bit of training. He may say the exact same thing you say, but your employees will hear it differently because it's from a different person. It's a great experience to go through as a team, and it can be free. Maybe you buy lunch, do a little lunch and learn. Ongoing training, though, is a great way to continue to sharpen the axe again. Fourth, cast that vision. It may be fresh in your mind. You have it memorized. You eat, drink, sleep, think it 24/7, but that's not how everyone operates. So cast that vision over and over and over again. Get it out in front of you, in front of your people, so that you keep the main thing the main thing. Fifth thing, cast that vision. It may be ingrained in your mind, but it's not ingrained in everyone else's. Again, repetition is the key here. I know, I think I'm funnier than I am, but you get the point. Cast the vision over and over and over. Don't let it leak. Don't expect everyone to wake up and recite your mission statement or your vision statement. Cast that vision and the why behind it in front of your people, and that's gonna keep the axe sharp. I hope you enjoyed this week's lesson. The manuscript is listed below. I'd love your comments, your feedback, and your ideas. If you give me your permission, and if they're good ideas, I'll use them in my book. I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next week as I bring you the next chapter of Volumployee. Until then, lead well.